Yes, team. Welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today we have a TMP superstar, Nikki Antonaccio. She is a nutrition psychology coach. She's the founder of Best Version Yet. And the first time we met was in Dubai. I sensed she had a really just unique energy. I could sense someone that's very driven, very bright, somebody that just all around fucking wants it. But the downside of being driven and bright and outright fucking wants it is one, we can burn out. Two, we can push ourselves to extremes. And three, we can spend a lot of time stuck in our heads. And I really resonated with her journey. When she came on board and started working with our very own Kate and the coaching team, I've been really, really excited and just sort of watching her journey and how she's evolved and seeing how she's showing up today to where she was is just inspiring. So Nikki, a huge welcome to the Total Mental Performance Podcast.
Thank you. What an introduction.
It's weird, isn't it? Because that feels like a different lifetime ago.
It does. It genuinely feels like a lifetime ago. Genuinely. Yeah. This time last October, it's not the same person you've just introduced.
Was that the first time you came across TMP, or had you seen us before?
I had come across you from JJ. So I'd worked with Mark Coles, I'd worked with JJ. I know JJ had worked with you guys. I'd seen lots and lots of bits online multiple times. I thought, these guys get it. I need some of this.
Amazing. And when you say these guys get it, what was it for you that stood out? I was like,
it was all the stuff around the fact that for a start, you guys understood the fitness and that kind of industry in terms of the health industry, but also you understood what happens in terms of the inner workings of a coach's life. Like I always say coaching is not a job, it's a calling. So it takes over your life. It is your life. Even the way I show up myself for my own health, nutrition, fitness. It's a big responsibility to turn up as a coach. You know, it's not a 9 to 5. You don't just rock up and then leave at the end of the day. And as much as you perhaps get, advice, it's well-meaning advice, switch off, make sure, you've got different working hours. We all find ourselves thinking about clients and coaching in other areas of life. It bleeds in. It's all one and the same. And I think I'd spent so long trying to separate the two things. And I had to really just lean into, no, I am all of it. And when I was listening to what you guys said with like your social media and stuff, it was like, I can have these struggles and still be really high performing. But if I learn how to manage them, then my life doesn't feel overwhelming. I can do it all.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's it. We talk a lot about the art of surrender and just being able to go, well, I don't need to feel perfect. Yeah, I can still achieve.
Yeah.
I don't need to burn myself into the floor and still be enough. And it's really separating out the identity from I must work hard in order to be successful. I must burn myself into the floor to be successful, or I must not be myself or hold myself back, and actually creating that level of freedom to step into your own space. And you've really, really stepped into your own space.
Yeah. Something I struggled with for most of my life was overworking for a fear of not being good enough and overcommitting myself and working hard, not working smart. My whole inner story, my whole life, and I only realised this in this last year, working with you guys, has been you must work hard to be successful or to be loved. And that comes up with so many things. Like I think the first post I ever really resonated with was when you'd put something up about what happens when a client leaves. How do you feel? And even now I can feel it makes me feel sick. I manage it much better now and I understand where it comes from and how to work through that. All the work I've done with yourselves and Kate, working on how to manage those emotions, thoughts and feelings so that they don't hijack me. My gosh, my whole life, if you go back and look through everything through that lens of why have I always felt like I've had to work hard to achieve anything, like you said at the beginning, it's this double-edged sword. I've done so much by working hard, but I don't have to keep killing myself to do it.
Oh, let's go deep. Let's go straight into the root cause. Where does that come from? What is it that drives that I have to work hard to be valuable?
So it's my relationship with my dad. It's been there for years. I come from a first generation immigrant family, Italian family, with a dad that was brought to England, couldn't speak a word of English. His parents couldn't speak a word of English. At 6 or 7 years old, his own kind of generational trauma, if you like, was digging into if he didn't get things right, his parents couldn't get a job because he had to write and fill out forms, paperwork, payment for all ridiculous stuff that I can now see is like, wow, you guys had a lot to deal with. That then, as we do, his version and story of that world was you need to be perfect to stay under the radar. So I was taught that as I grow up, to get what you want to in life, you need to work your arse off because it has to be really, really hard and it has to be a real challenge. You need to keep your head down and work so people don't notice you because you're different. You must burn yourself to a crisp and not get paid a lot for it. It literally comes from being like 6 years old, seeing my dad say, well, you have to work like that. There's no other choice.
Yeah. And that's his model of the world based on his surroundings and how he was brought up. But
yeah,
you kind of have to break that generational, not curse, but that generational trauma. You got to love it. You got to accept it and go, you know what? Like, I wouldn't be here without that. But it is our responsibility to not take those lessons and break through those lessons.
My thing is I can now look back after the work I've done with TMP and with Kate and be grateful for all of that and understand it, because I know I wouldn't be the person I am without it. I wouldn't have achieved all the things I've done. I've done some, when I list it now, I've done some ridiculous stuff over the years, and I've never stopped to take any stock or celebrate any of it because I've always just been next thing, not good enough. But my attitude now is it ends with me. So whatever that was, it ends with me.
There's a beauty in that, because it's the acceptance of one's story, and it's the acceptance of those parts that we reject ourselves for. And as that inner child is screaming for attention, it's screaming to work hard, it's actually recognizing, no, it's okay. It's okay. You're enough as you are.
Yeah.
And I think evidence that you've really made peace with the past is looking back at it and going, I needed that. I wouldn't be here without that. And it sounds like you've got there. And I'm guessing that wasn't an easy process.
No, I was going to say, there were certain parts of that story, even till very recently, that I've struggled with eating disorders. I was a professional dancer. I was a contemporary and ballet dancer for 15 years. I've struggled with extremes all my life. Either extreme weight gain, extreme restriction, a lot of that. Again, if you think back to as I was growing up, in an Italian household, food's a big deal.
Yeah.
A big deal, right? You connect over it. It's family, it's connection, it's love. My mum would take me to the shops on a Friday after school and buy me sweets because I'd been a good girl, because I'd done well at school.
Did you used to binge on sweets?
Oh, I used to binge on sweets and hide them. And I would chuck the wrappers away and not tell anybody. And this was still until about 2 years ago, Kieran.
Fascinating, isn't it? Because I used to have a binge eating disorder too. I think we spoke about that, and that's part of why we resonated and connected. And my mum's from Spain, so I've got a big Spanish family, kind of similar, but then also uniquely different as well. But whenever I used to go see my nan, she'd pick me up from the airport. She'd give me a big cuddle and a kiss and a big bag of sweets. So whenever I was stressed for fights, what would I do? I'd go and binge eat on sweets. Yeah, sweets equal love. And you'd be like, Well,
I had the total opposite as well. So mum would be there giving me sweets to say, well done, we love you, you're wonderful, but we can't really verbalise it, we don't know how else to say it. Dad, on the other hand, go to bed without dinner.
So you got double extremes.
So then as I grew up and I'm going through dance school, I'm struggling with my own trauma. Again, I'm going to go quite deep, so if it triggers anybody, I'm sorry, but my mum and dad have had quite a physical abusive relationship most of my adult and teenage years. When I went off to dance school, I escaped that whole environment. I was still very, very scared because I knew it was going on, but none of it was being openly, nobody would openly tell me or admit it. I saw markings, I saw bruisings, I knew what was going on, and I could never validate it or get confirmation, even though I could see it with my own eyes. Now, what I ended up doing at dance school for 4 years was basically punishing myself with food. I thought it was my fault. I wasn't good enough. I'd left. It was my fault it was going on. I'd ring my mum at 5:30 every morning and check she was still alive, Kieran. Every morning for 4 years. So then when you start getting into this whole world of like, so then I'd try and restrict my food because I didn't feel like I was good enough, I wasn't lovable enough. Was it my fault? Again, a massive codependence on communication, the phone. Like, I'm just going to zip forwards into modern day now with me. My phone in the mornings, I would check it every morning in case a client's messaged.
Yeah.
Where's that pattern come from?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
It's
amazing.
not hard
When
to
it
see, is
picks up
it?
these connections very quickly, and
Yeah.
and that's why you're able to accelerate very quickly. But that's when the lines of code are being born. Is in childhood, and that shows up. It's funny because it will show up just as little things like, why can't I not put my phone down, or why can I not stop if I'm going to binge eat? I still eat pick and mix sweets now, and every now and then I have a little binge, and I'm like, yeah, my little kid, my little inner child got what he needed, but I can't have him in the
He
house.
needed something today. What did he need? You know
Yeah,
what I
he
mean?
needed, but
Yeah.
it shows up as like as little signs, but actually when you go back to the root cause and the connections of it,
Yeah.
that you start
Again,
seeing.
I was waking up when I started working with Kate. I was waking up in panic attacks every morning.
Yeah.
So I was laying in bed, and it would feel like someone had just gone and jumped on my chest every morning. I'd be shaking, checking my phone, and I'd be like, "Why? Why? What am I worried about?" And on the surface, it was about clients leaving and finances, and okay, but why? Like, there was nothing wrong with my business,
Yeah.
nothing,
No, your business
right?
has been flying. It's been
It
flying
was
for a good while.
killing it, and for the first time I can step forward and say it was, and it is killing it, like, and not feel embarrassed about it. But I'm there panicking that people might be leaving, and it's like, right, we need to understand why. Where the hell does that come from, and why is that now showing up in business? Because essentially I've learned it's the same lessons that I had in bodybuilding, because I went from dance straight into bodybuilding. My perspective, it was a good excuse to carry on disordered eating patterns and very extreme restriction. All those patterns that I unlearned from bodybuilding, because it was very black and white, very extreme. It was, I'm probably going to, can I swear, piss people off.
Hmm.
I now, the way my experience of bodybuilding is a dressed up excuse to hide from my eating disorders.
Yeah,
Right, so
I
it
hear
might be
that.
a bit like, um, all I ended up doing was going, right, I'm going to go all in here. I'm going to work very hard to be successful. I'm going to put myself in front of a group of peers that mean nothing to me, that are going to tell me whether I'm good or not, and if I've worked
When you
hard
phrase it
or
like that,
not.
it's pretty mental, isn't it? Yeah.
And then all I did with that whole journey was like, right, this has got to stop. There has to be another way. Because my weight would balloon from stage lean to single digit body fat, which for a woman's really fucking hard, up to 3 or 4 stone overweight. And it would balloon like that in 18 months at a time. I would have to kill myself to get the weight off. I think the worst prep I ever did was 10 weeks of white fish, beans, and udos oil 6 times a day, with 2-3 hours of cardio and weight training 6 days a week. That fucks with your head.
Yeah, it fucks with your head a number of different ways. And it's fascinating because it's not your fault, but you're responsible for everything. So all
Yes.
the things that you experience, it's not necessarily your fault, but you are responsible for the management of it. Almost like it's like when you get a dog with a bad temperament. It's not your
Yeah.
fault that the dog's got a bad temperament, but it is your fault it's your
It's your
responsibility
job to make sure it doesn't go around biting
to
everybody.
manage it.
Like,
But what you'll find is something we haven't spoken about. What I've noticed there is environment. So if we look at the environment that you had growing up, and then if you look at the environment you had going into dancing. So one of my exes was a dancer, and she's also a therapist. So she gave me the inside out of this is how it's fucked. You know, you're not big enough. You're too big. You're too big. You're too big. You need to be smaller. You need to be smaller. You need to look a certain way. You know, you walk out onto a stage call. Someone just goes, "You're too big,
no.
girl."
You
Get
just
out.
walk into a room and they'd just go, no,
Yeah.
literally,
Like absolutely,
no.
absolutely fucking ruthless world.
Yeah.
And then you basically essentially took that into somewhere where you felt safe again, which is bodybuilding, because it's essentially the same thing. You walk in and people go, amazing,
Yes or
or
no?
no,
That's
you know.
it. Yeah.
Uh,
But
and
that
it is,
lesson, like it hasn't, I'm going to be honest, it doesn't go away until you relearn it. Like, it just showed up in business. I fixed it in bodybuilding. I worked with a different coach. I did a lot of my own work. That's hence I'm a nutrition psychology coach now, because I went, there has to be another way than white fish and beans. This is ridiculous, right? I went into all of that world about finding, I wouldn't say balance, because I think balance is bullshit, but that's another story for another day. But I found a way to self-manage where I can still have a social life. I have had to let go of the extremities of bodybuilding to do that, but I'm at peace with it, right? I like myself now physically. I didn't for very, very many years. I got bullied all the way through secondary school about my bottom half being much bigger than my top half. It was always my bugbear in dance school. It was, as a ballet dancer, your legs are too big. When I jumped on stage, it was, oh, your legs are too much. Can you lose some muscle? It was just the same shit. I like myself now and I'm cool with it, right? But that lesson of overworking and working too hard and taking stuff to extremes just showed up in business 3 years later. I hadn't
Yeah.
learned from it.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting as well is like people often think TMP is about, oh, they just want you to take loads of downtime, they want you to rest or whatever. No, we don't. We want you to fucking craft. But the thing is, our clients don't have a hard work issue. Hard work is such, as horrible as it sounds, perhaps in the majority of the world, hard working is rare. With our clients, it's not. It's the most, that's like a penny. It's like the most common denominator. Everyone's working hard. Everybody's crafting.
I think one
Everybody.
of the biggest things that really resonated in my TMP journey was people that got it. I don't need to be told to work harder. I need to be taught how to work smarter, because I will feel guilty if I'm, and I've done it before in previous coaching courses and so on. I've jumped in calls and I'm being told by that person that I perceive to be is authority to be told again, well, you're not working hard enough. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. And I'm sat there thinking, am I not? I thought I was. Oh my God, let me go and overwork because this person says that all of us in this room are not working hard enough. And then when I've sat down one-to-one with that person and said, I'm really anxious that I've got all this perception of what I need to do, the person has sat me down and said, Nikki, you're doing 10 times more than everybody else. What are you on about? It wasn't aimed at you.
Yeah,
but when I listen to you guys in like a TMP story and like, hang on a minute, Nikki, you don't need to be told or taught to have a better work ethic. You need to know how to manage all of your thoughts, all of your energy, and how to not burn out and sustain it. That's what got me.
Yeah, like in those scenarios as well, group coaching programs are great. You know, we have a new one coming out in the next couple of months, TMP Light. I don't know if I'm not sold on that answer, but it is like a TMP Light for our course. But the problem with group coaching programs is, you know, it's one message can really help 60% of the room and it can fuck up 20 to 30% of the room. And you've got to be really careful with the messages that you've got. You didn't have a hard work issue. Like you said, it was channeling that. I'm going to talk a little bit about being driven. And a chief revenue officer in London told that to me once. And he said, "You're driven." And I said, "Yeah, but so is everyone." He said, "No, they're not. Look across the office floor. You're in at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're leaving 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and you're grafting." And he goes, "The difference is people that are genuinely driven don't have to be told. They just do. They just operate. It just happens." And that stuck with me. And then I started understanding drive and whatever. And the conclusion I've come to is the majority of the world thinks that they're driven or they want to be driven because driven is currently the sexy thing. It wasn't the sexy thing before, but right now, drive and ambition is the sexy thing. So everybody wants to be that. But the reality is, if you're not driven, then you're always going to be stuck because you're going to be pushing against yourself. You didn't have that problem. We don't have a drive issue with Nikki. We had an application issue. We had an issue of, okay, well, how do we apply that raw fire and that energy and control it? And when we think about fire, because that's what you've got a very fiery character. Fire can keep the house, as Customato, the trainer of Mike Tyson, said, it can keep the house warm, it can help cook your food, it can put man on the moon, but fire can also burn the house down and destroy everything. And that's essentially what you had. And it was learning for you to turn the dimmer switch down a little bit and bring the fire more in control, more in consistent.
And not feel guilt for doing that.
Yeah. Having the freedom to do that.
And two things in the way that I work, not feel guilt for doing that, but actually really embodying and surrendering that slowing down for me is speeding up. I thought that was bullshit.
Yeah.
I kind of went, yeah, and just didn't really actually embody it for quite a while. But then when I realised, when I was scheduling what I call float time into my days, which is just time to choose. If I want to work, I can. I don't have to, because it's not scheduled. Oh my God, you must do this task in this order on this time. And one of the biggest things for me was putting float time into my day and learning how my brain works. I've got ADHD. Probably gathered that just from the way I talk, right? But learning how to manage my brain was something I had never, ever looked at. I was like, why do I work that way? Why don't I think the same as other people? What is this about? Why does my day, if my routine is different, absolutely fuck me up for the whole day? How do I organise that? Because my time management, I've got to be honest, I thought my time management was spot on. I showed Kate my diary and she nearly had a heart attack.
Yeah.
First time she saw it, her face, literally, her jaw dropped and she went, how are you functioning? I'm not, Kate. I'm not, basically. It was a mess. But I perceived myself as somebody that I'm very timetable driven. I used to be a teacher. I've been a dancer for years. Literally call times to 30 seconds to a minute. But all that did was perpetuate this chaos because I feel like I could fit more in than that's realistic. Kieran, I have zero concept of time. I've only realised that in the last year. Zero.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah,
I have
welcome.
no idea how long a task should take. I have no long idea how long it does take. I have a 3-hour block. I think I'm going to take over the world. I have no idea.
A little tip, if you haven't got this down already, is have clocks everywhere. So what I've got on here, I've got something called desktop clock. So
Yeah.
at the top left-hand corner of my screen, I've got a clock. On top of that, I'm always staring at so 21 minutes have gone past. I'm always staring at how long that this is going on. I've always got this watch on. Always, I've got a clock here, I've got a clock here, and then just down there as well, there's a little clock. Clocks everywhere, because otherwise, the next thing you know, you wake up and it's, oh shit, 5 hours. What we've been doing for 5 hours, and
This flip side of it for me, I see a block in a diary that feels like it's 5, 6, 10 hours long, and I schedule these really important things that have to be done, and I haven't got anywhere near enough time to do it. One thing that Kate helped me work through with that, I understand energy management and how to manage my day to get the best out of me, and 2, timing shit when I do it. Like, put a stopwatch on. How long does it actually take you to write a client's program? You think it takes 20 minutes, it takes an hour and 20 minutes. Ah, okay. That's really helped.
yeah, doing a time study is interesting because you always think. For me, I do the same thing, which is overestimating how much I can get done in a certain amount of time. Oh, I've got an hour, I'll get all of this done. And you do it, like, I only got task 1 out of 5 done in this
Or I've
hour.
ended up in a TikTok hole, one or the other.
Yeah, all that. And it's learning that, well, I've got to work with what I've got. But when you're on it, and it's building a structure. Adam Haley said this one to me in a client session once. He goes, you know what you've really helped me optimize, mate? The 6 inches between my ears. And it's like,
It's
yeah,
so true.
it is about optimizing that. And the metaphor that I use with, particularly with my ADHD clients, is and my ASD clients, is they often have a Ferrari, a supercar in their brain. They just don't know how to drive it yet. So start, it's running out of fuel, it's skidding out, it's going really quick, and actually just having a lesson. And this isn't just for ADHD or ASDs, but this is just for every single human being, is that when you can start to understand how whether you've got a Ferrari, whether you've got a Ford, or a big Ford Bronco, one of those big pickup trucks, or whether you've got an American muscle car or whatever, it doesn't matter. But learning the car that you have in between your ears, insofar as your mind, whether you think, feel, and perform, and learning how to drive that and optimizing for that, fucking hell, that transcends the business success, because a lot of our clients make more money because they're operating better. But it transcends that, and it gets into just overall fulfillment, happiness, flow,
just
and life.
like if I look at now, so one of the things I've really took on board with my time working through this process has been this whole energy management thing. Like, absolutely love the book that's recommended. Incredible, right? I literally read it, I was like, oh my god, that's me. Oh my god. I was a slave to doing things in a certain order because I perceived them having to be that way. And actually stripping everything back and going, hang on, let's stop time management. When do you feel your best, Nikki? And how are you going to show up as the best you? What does that look like? I've learned that for me is starting work at 9:30, 10 o'clock now, not starting my check-ins at 8 because I'm working from a place of anxiety to get them out of the way. I used to do them first thing in the morning because I was worried that I was overcommitted with my time, that if I put them any later in the day, I would fail and I wouldn't get them done. Now I get up and I go to the gym first. I love training, and I got to the point that my training was becoming 8, 9 o'clock at night and I didn't want to do it and I hated it. That is a no-go for me in terms of fulfillment. I love movement. I always have done. Been a dancer, I've been a bodybuilder, I train. It's my favourite thing to do is to move my body. So I put it first. That's me every morning by 9:30. I sit down, I have done my training session for the day. I've prioritized myself. My phone isn't blowing up with client messages because it's early morning. I can sit down with a coffee, and then between 9 and midday, I am at my best for check-ins. I can go through like 65 check-ins. But midday, I grind to a halt. I literally grind to a halt. If I try to push past about 12:30, 1, I just do nothing. So I get up at midday now, I go out for a walk, get some nature, get some sunlight. And then now I know for me in an afternoon, I can come back and either do some calls between about 2 and 5. I'm good with communication, and about 3 or 4 calls is my max at the minute, so my brain doesn't explode. But late evening, you get me at about 6:30 till about 9:30, I can do really deep creative work. I know that about myself now.
I'm sat here like just happy, proud coach, because you're driving the car at the times it wants to be driven, and you're also taking the car in for a morning MOT, and you're also taking it for a service, and you're just owning it. And that, a lot of people ask me more about time management. Oh, I need to manage my time better, but actually it's an energy management issue, not a time management issue. And when you can learn,
I don't think I appreciated what energy management was until I slowed down enough to listen to what I need and what I like.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel good enough to do that. I didn't feel like it was okay. I felt like somebody had to say to me, "We meant to work hard, to work first." No. This is my passion and my calling. It's going to go on for the next 50 years, hopefully. So I need to figure out how to do this shit and enjoy it. So I'm going to get up in the morning and do my stuff first, which I'd have felt really, really guilty about a year ago. It'd have been bullshit metrics like, oh yeah, coaching's going really well, everything's going well. No, it's not, Nikki. You're struggling and suffering and not telling anybody.
This is a moment
now we've got, so
from
where I was a year ago, if you just want metrics, because I know people like to measure stuff, I was coaching by myself, coaching 60 clients, really struggling to get my head above water, waking up in panic attacks, having panics and freaking out over not dropping the ball on stuff. I couldn't move forwards and build the business or do any of the creative things because I had no space. Fast forward to now, less than a year later, I've got 2 team members that have taken over 40 of my clients. I've got my own 20 clients. I'm launching 3 new programs. I've managed to recreate all the back end of my business. Do you want any more success in a year?
Yeah. And you're enjoying it and you're happy.
Enjoying it and getting married in 3 weeks and planning a wedding, and none of it feels overwhelming.
There you go. So when we talk about total mental performance, it isn't just about feeling great all the time, but it's the ability to push and to pull, to be able to sharpen the saw. So when you're making decisions get done quicker and faster. And it's also just having the outright belief and backing. For you, the belief and backing wasn't necessary to do it. Yours was more around actually slowing down to speed up. Yours was actually having the confidence to take some downtime and actually sharpen the saw. Because once you start sharpening the saw, you're getting a lot more done. You get a lot more done. You get a lot more results. You get a lot more results. It compounds into more, compounds into more, compounds.
So if we looked at that flip side of that, yes, all these things sound wonderful, how the business is growing, but my biggest success is that I'm happy and feel calm every day. So I really, really love my little half an hour now in an afternoon where I grab a book and I don't feel guilty for doing it, because I know I've got coaching clients perhaps from 4:30 or 5 o'clock. If I don't have that little bit of half an hour to myself, I really resent doing the coaching calls.
Yeah. I
don't like doing them. They piss me off if I haven't had time for myself. And I would rather be like, no, I've had half an hour, I've sat, I've chilled for a bit, I've read a book, I've been out for a walk. Cool, let's go.
And again, this is the stuff that transcends money. So a lot of clients come to us, I need to get better at my business, I need to get better here, and that always happens. But it's the intangible stuff of enjoying yourself. And one frame that you said earlier, which was, this is your life's work. I work with them in my private business, but most of the coaches in the high performance that come through Total Mental Performance aren't looking to sell their company in the next 2 to 3 years. So then I always say to them, why are you behaving as if that's the case? And they said, what do you mean? And they're like, well, I said, well, I've coached guys that are looking to sell their companies and have sold their companies. And they're looking to do an exit plan within 3 years. Well, if you're going to do an exit plan in 3 years and you've got investment, you've got very specific targets to hit. Because if you don't, you're not getting the next round of funding in order to sell that company. You've told me you want to be a coach for the next 10, 15 years. So why are you driving this car as if you're selling this company next year, because you're not.
No.
So, oh yeah, okay, well, yeah, I guess. And ultimately, it's painting a path towards freedom and painting a path of longevity and consistency.
And
But
what does that, like, one of my things was always, what does freedom look like?
hmm,
What does freedom look like? And I'm getting deep, but well, for me, freedom is being able to do the things I like, speak to people the way I want to, connect with people that are like-minded, help people, because a big part of what I do, have always been an educator, a teacher, a performer of some description, to leave people feeling better, or leave people better than I found them, whether that's through a performance, whether that's through education, help, support, friendship, whatever it is. And whether I'm being paid for that or not, that's just in me. That's what I'll always do, try and leave people better than I found them. So if I'm gonna do that, then let's figure out a way to make me do it and enjoy it, because I'm going to do it whether there's a company there or not.
yeah, and for that's for me, freedom is the ability to work towards something better, bigger, greater,
Mm-hmm.
fun, whilst being at peace with oneself. It's finding joy. So joy optimization, like you can find joy in so many different things. So for me,
Yeah.
thinking about, okay, well, how can we, take this up another level? How can we add another 3, 4, 5, 6 coaches over the next 12 to
Yeah.
18 months? How can we create a group coaching mechanism that impacts,
Mm-hmm.
lives around the world? But then
Big
also
impact.
on a one-to-one level, just listening to somebody's story and going, well, what is it? What is it that happened that has them ticking in that certain way, and unlocking that thought and that feeling and that belief, and watching that and coaching the team and helping watching my team grow
Them
and
grow
develop and
and
become
yeah,
more
yeah,
confident, and all of that. That for me is joy. So
yeah,
when it comes to freedom, it's being at peace with oneself while stretching towards something out of abundance, love,
yeah,
light, and growth, versus I'm doing this to validate myself, I'm doing this to prove that I'm enough, I'm doing this
yeah.
to do it for
And I think
ultimately out of
something
darkness.
else that you just touched on there that was really relevant is when you're working at over capacity and you have no room to be creative or stretch yourself, you feel stuck. It's as good as a dead end job.
Hmm.
It's terrible because you're in a place where you're like, I haven't even got the space to think of creative ideas. Who am I anymore? My creativity has been mashed out of me. I am a creative person. Human beings generally, we need to be able to be stretched and creative to be fulfilled. So unless I give myself the space to do that, I'm going to be really miserable. And I'm not a very nice person to be around when I'm miserable. Ask my fiance.
Right. So again, it's learning. Total mental performance isn't just at work, but it's in your personal life, and it's
Yeah.
the ability to perform and be water, and adapt and adjust and
Mhm.
grow, and ultimately have that perspective. And look, no one's perfect. I still have moments where I'm like, fucking hell, I've got all this stuff to do. Jesus Christ. Or
Yeah.
that speaking tour I did over the last couple of weeks really wiped me out, completely
Mm.
wiped me out. Took on too many talks. I didn't know if I could do that many talks with that many flights and trains and whatever.
Yeah.
That was a lesson. I kind of walked into that knowing it was going to be a stretch, but
So
let's
that
see.
must have been the thing that was driving the, oh, let's see if I can do it though. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was. Let's see if it's possible. And I learned, okay, no, you need more rest time. You need more sleep. You need, you
I
can't
mean,
do it
it's
like
even little things like that, Kieran, right? So I'm a used to be a bugger for never taking any time off because I feel like my whole business would fall away and disappear. Because of course, if I take 2 days off, anyway, ridiculous.
that.
But that a lot of people feel like it. I did. I would then say if we were going away, I would work till 9 o'clock the night before, and then I would be straight back to work the Monday morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'd
Mm.
be miserable, I'd be resentful, I'd have loads on, I wouldn't switch off on the weekend, I'd feel harassed, I'd be on my phone constantly. No, I've learned now. Let's take a day before and let's take a day after and just wind down and ramp up. Feels great.
The ability to switch off, you really just really ramp up creativity. And also, as you're going to experience now over the next 12 months, the next phase of your development, as you start to scale a team and grow, it's a bit harder when you're a solo owner operator. But as you start to grow, you'll start to learn that actually this little baby that's been crawling around on the floor is starting to grow legs. And
Yeah.
yeah, sure, it's starting to stumble. So I would say TMP for where it's at right now, it's standing up
Yeah.
and it's taking a few steps,
Yeah.
and it's gotten to the point where I can take a week off with zero work communications and it doesn't completely fall over. But I
Yeah.
also recognize a little bit too longer it's going to fall over, and it's helping that. And as
Yeah.
you grow now, it will be a case of recognizing and having the trust and the backing of yourself, your systems, and your teams to go, right, I'm taking a however long off, and
Yeah.
let's do that, and you'll come back so energized with so much more
Yeah.
just clarity and meaning and purpose. You'll love it. You'll absolutely love it.
That's freedom for me, getting to the point where I can do that and not be like, oh my god, I've got to be on my phone 24/7. I've been when you're stretching your nervous system instead of stressing it out. Done the odd day here and there where I've been like, right, I'm not contactable, you girls are in charge, off you go, I'm not available. And my girls have killed it. They've absolutely killed it. They've shown up. I'm so proud of them, and it makes me proud of myself because I know that I've created that.
Yeah, you create the container in which results happen.
Yeah.
So that's what a coaching organization is. You create a container where results happen. We're at a point now where I bump into the team's clients, and I've never spoken to these clients. It doesn't go through me. It goes through. A client makes an application that is then reviewed by me, and then I go, okay, I actually think this is the best fit for Dan to have the conversation, or Kate, or Charlotte, or whatever, and it just goes through that. But I'm now meeting people where they've never come to a live call with the TMP client calls. They've never come to a live call, and I've also never spoken to them. I've never, maybe like obviously I send them a voice note every now and then or whatever, but never actually like been on a call with them.
Yeah.
And then they walk up to me and shake my hand. They say, "You've changed my life," and it's like, wow. And that is the power of creating a coaching container. And when you recognize that it's not just you, but it's the container upon which results happen. Every single client interaction that they have with each other, every single podcast, the internal podcast that they listen to, every bit of training, every one-to-one with one of your coaches. And you recognize that my job as a coaching entrepreneur is to create a container for change, not me. 1 hour of my time means.
Yeah, I think that's something actually that if there's anybody that's listening that's on that cusp of they've got a team they're building and they're in that weird transition-y phase, I found I took everything so personally before because it was me. If somebody wasn't getting results, it was my fault. If somebody left, it was because of me, because I wasn't good enough. The moment I built a business that had it might sound daft, had a brand, it's got a name, it's not me, it's a thing and it's an entity of its own, and I identified what that brand and business's values were and what it meant and what that container can impact on a larger scale, combined with all the work I've done on myself, there's a separation. Instead of everything being so taken so personally and it having such a negative effect on my day that it would ruin the whole day's coaching, I know if there's a problem, I can deal with it as a problem, as a standalone thing that's a business issue. It's not a me issue.
Yeah. And it's quite hard because as a coach, when you start out, I actually think to get your first 5-10 clients, it's actually easier by just naming yourself you. I do believe it's easier to get clients that way than it is to build a brand and do it the second way. But you have to almost try and create a internal balance. I mean, I kind of knew this intuitively. So when I was 16, I went to the Peter Jones Enterprise Academy. For those who don't know who Peter Jones is, he's the big bloke, sits on the end of Dragon's Den. So he's a massive entrepreneur, investor, one of the most successful British entrepreneurs that we've had. And I set up a company then, and I didn't call it Kieran O'Neill whatever, but I called it KLO Distributions. And what it did was it was still me and mine, but at the same time, it enabled me to create that level of distance. And I've always done that with every business that I've created or built or worked in. I've always created that separation, because as soon as you identify with the results of the business, whether that's on client results or whether that's on financial results, you are stuck. You're always going to get stuck. You're always going to get, you essentially put your value on something that you can't control.
Yeah, it's and like when you're working with clients that put their value on scales for weight loss. You can't do that. If you wrap all your value up in that one metric and your identity up in it, you're screwed.
Yeah, it fucked me in boxing. Actually, a core origin story. One of my boxing coaches is like my father figure. He passed away when I was 16. I got taken on by this other coach who was an England coach. And long story short, I was with him for years, and he really, really took my level to a completely different league.
Yeah.
But then another boxer came along, and it wasn't a guy, it was a girl. And he then all of a sudden took all of the time and energy from all of us boys and put it
Yeah.
just on her.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't getting what I needed, and I communicated that many times, and it just wasn't working. So look, I
Yeah.
just said, look, I'm not getting what I need from this, and I want to go to the Olympics. That's my dream. So
Yeah.
I left that coach, and he said to me, you know, you're only good because you're light. So I was 56 kilos,
Mm.
and that internally
Yeah.
stuck with me. So
Yeah.
I managed. I think I'm 173 centimeters high, about
Yeah.
174 now. But I was 56 kilos.
Yeah.
So
Light.
I had this story in my head, which was I'm a
Yeah.
giant, but I'm only good because of this weight. So then when
Yeah.
I got onto the England team, I got onto the men's team. It was at 56 kilos, but I couldn't maintain that. So I was
Yeah.
constantly eating and dieting and eating and
Yeah.
dieting, and just one line from
It's
from
mad,
some
isn't
people,
it?
that one
I mean,
belief.
just thinking back to my dance school days. So, in a similar vein, I went to Northern School of Contemporary Dance. So, 40 people per year get accepted across the whole world. Like, it's that kind of high level standard conservatoire school. But they've also got very, very antiquated, or did have, shouldn't say they do now, but had very, very antiquated perceptions of dance, health, fitness, mindset, mental health and well-being. We would be stood in front of a classroom of other dancers in your leotard and tights, and your teacher would pick fault with your physique. They would walk around and
Ah,
go,
that's
that
so
needs to
bad.
go, this needs to go, that's wobbly, this
And
needs to
how old are
go.
you girls at this point?
I mean, this is like this is university age. So
Oh,
18, we went at 16. So it was 16 to 21. So from my perspective, there's still a responsibility from an educational establishment. You are managing young people to deal with the rigors of training 6 to 8 hours a day. Kieran, if I told you in those 4 years we had one nutrition seminar, one in 4 years, there was
yeah,
eating disorders rife
yeah.
everywhere.
Not
Anybody
surprised.
that spoke up and said that they had an eating disorder was bundled off with their parents and asked to leave the school without speaking.
No, I'm not surprised.
The
It's
school, we don't have an eating disorder problem. We don't have that. It
yeah,
was just unbelievable. You'd have teachers literally coming around with, the swimming noodles, the foam noodles. They'd come around and poke bits and say, that's too fat. Get rid of that bit. That's too fat. You think about what that does to quite an impressionable mind, where you're trying to impress your teachers because you are still trying to prove to them that you are good enough. You're then showing up to auditions and you're walking into a room of 400 people and they're just going, nah, get out. It doesn't lend itself to the most encouraging environment, does it?
no, God, it's fucked. It's really fucked. Um,
Yeah.
for me, when I was there, like I was the only guy that went to therapy, and I was the only guy that but eating disorders are rife in boxing, but it's part of the culture. So you
Yeah.
can't just go, let's just post fight, whatever. It'll be fine on Monday, and then it just
Same with
goes
bodybuilding, right? Same with
yeah,
bodybuilding. Like everybody would like glorify their after post show binge.
yeah. And I remember going to a group eating disorder class on the NHS, and there was like 25 girls and just me. And on top of it, a lot of these girls gorgeous. They were absolutely drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I, as this sort of very insecure guy that had a fear of talking to women, particularly women that he found attractive. Oh my god, it was like such a
Oh, wow.
it was a disaster. I went once and never went back. Now things are changing, and mental health and that world is being spoken about a hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
But I think now, regardless, even if I do think as a coach, like it is your responsibility to just be aware of these dynamics that are going on, even if you've never struggled yourself personally with those dynamics. It's important for your clients that you have that space. So I've got a couple more questions before we wrap up. If you was gonna look back on the Nikki that you were when you started versus where you are today, and you can look and just compare those two individuals, you're just going to get the pool noodle out and start poking those poking them around. What would you say the key differences are between those two?
Karma. That's the biggest thing that comes up. Karma, clarity. My nervous system doesn't feel like it's on edge all the time. It still does, and I still have to manage it and symptom manage it. It just feels like I've matured emotionally through that time compared to where I was. I thought I was, but actually, when you get the difference and you think, hang on a minute, this now comes from a place that's intrinsic, not external. I'm not doing this because somebody else thinks that that's what you should do. I'm not doing it to get approval of somebody else. I'm working out what it lights me up now and doing it from that way inside out.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's where you happen to the world versus the world happens to you, and that's a powerful shift.
Yeah.
And that is where reality starts to really change. What would you say to somebody? Because we get a lot of people on the podcast, and if you're one of these people, you're probably gonna resonate with this. But they're like stalkers. They're like lurkers. I've had so many people say when they get onto a call, I'm going to be honest, I listened to 25 episodes of the podcast.
Yeah.
I've been following your stuff for like a year and a half. I know it's something I need to work on. I've finally picked up the courage, or you know what, fuck this, I've had enough.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people about raising their hand or potentially getting started or even just exploring?
Genuinely, I think that from my perspective as a nutrition psychology coach, I spent years and I don't want to undermine anybody, but just being a fitness coach, because that's the role I felt safe being and doing. And just from my own business life perspective, until you get to the nitty gritty of what's going on in between here and optimize this, nothing changes. That's not to scare people, but whether that's for weight loss, for business, for personal performance, relationships, unless you sort this out between your ears.
She's pointing at her brain and her mind for those listening back.
Pointing at my mind in my brain. Unless you get that sorted and really work on your beliefs, working through how you work best as a person, not just as a business or whatever else, nothing's going to change. So that you're just wasting time unless you do something about it.
Yeah, I hear you. Final question.
Yes.
You've probably heard this question if you've listened to the podcast before. But forget us as a company, forget us as a team, forget us as an organization. But what does the phrase total mental performance mean to you? If you had total mental performance, how would you know?
Self-mastery, being able to show up the way I want to in all areas of my life.
Amazing. Love that. Love that. Well, Nikki, look, thank you so much for being such a superstar client. Just watching your growth and where you've been getting to has been inspiring. And it's not been an easy journey as well. I understand that you've had to overcome a hell of a lot. And just seeing you now, just so much full of so much more light and love and abundance. And just, I can just sense you've got alignment. And when you have alignment, it's a powerful, powerful thing. You happen to the world, not the world happens to you, and I can sense that. So just a huge thank you. And
thank you.
Well done. Where can everyone find you?
So I'm on Instagram. I'm on the new Threads as well these days.
Yeah, Threads.
And most of my stuff's on Facebook and Instagram. So yeah.
So where what would somebody search to find you?
My name, Nikki Antonaccio.
Amazing. Team, look, if you love this podcast, please share it out to the world. We're trying to help everybody around the world realize that they're not alone. It's not just them. That you can still be a high performer and still have all the thoughts, the feelings that hold you back, and still win and still find a way to be successful. Please share it out to all of your universes. Big love, team, and I'll see you all in the next episode.